really do think this has all been pre-planned. I think that President Xi and President Trump and President Putin and frankly Kim Jong-un all had an agreement that this is done. They're not going to go along with the program to eradicate humanity, and they've frustrated it. And this is our defining moment there. That's why you're not seeing the nuclear exchange. Even the Persians agreed, we're not going to destroy humanity, because otherwise all of these things would have worked, right? Putin would have rolled all the way to Kiev by now, and he hasn't done that. He's honored the Minsk Accords. So for whatever reason, I really believe that Trump is already kind of in place, and he will walk back in, and we're not going to have a civil war. I pray, and I think we're having that near-death experience intentionally, and Russia and China and North Korea and others are in on it, including the Persians.
Hey guys, welcome back. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Sean from SGT Report here with just one request. Would you all please support the channel by giving it a like over on Rumble? To get on the leaderboard on Rumble, you have to get what they call rumbles. You got to get the likes. It's more important over there, I guess, than view count. So please support the content. Give it a like on Rumble. That was attorney Todd Callender. Join us as we process the downfall of the Dog King, Joe Biden, and the deep state. There's lots of good news to share in this one, friends. Before we start, just a quick word about our sponsor. Guys, how do you feel after you eat a big meal? You know, digestive issues are caused by a potential toxin that's in all of the, quote, healthy foods that scientists have been telling us to eat with that fraudulent food pyramid. And this toxin causes digestive issues, according to Dr. Gundry, a world-renowned cardiologist. It's affecting millions of people nationwide. Warning signs include weight gain and fatigue, digestive discomfort, and stiff joints, even skin problems. Dr. Gundry explains these side effects are often mistaken for normal signs of aging because digestive issues develop usually over a matter of years. The damage is probably being caused by health foods, and it's far from normal. The good news is you can easily help fix the problem from your own home. It's simple. You just have to know which foods are actually healthy and which contain this hidden potential toxin. So find out for yourself at gutcleanseprotocol.com/SGT. That's gutcleanseprotocol.com/SGT. Because after years of research, Dr. Gundry has decided to release an informative video to the public for free and uninterrupted, showcasing exactly which foods you must avoid. So click below and find that video. It's gutcleanseprotocol.com/SGT. Hey friends, welcome back. Thank you so very much for tuning in. It's Sean from SGT Report, and you know you can find me over on Rumble and yes, BitChute as well. Seems like BitChute is losing a bit of traction though lately. The numbers are going down. Maybe that's because CloutHub is on the rise. You can find us on CloutHub as well. Very glad to welcome back to the show my longtime friends, attorney Todd Callender and Dr. Lee Vliet. Doc, how are you today?
I'm reasonably well, thank you, Sean.
Good to see you. And attorney Todd Callender. How are you, brother?
I'm even better. I'm more better because you mentioned CloutHub at the beginning. Thank you.
More better. Always good to know you're feeling more better. Todd, we love what you're doing over at CloutHub. And let me just show first clip of the day, guys. The treacherous lecher was on display for the whole world to see, and his true colors were on display Thursday night. It was truly a sight to behold.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
All right. I'm coming back to my guests. We could play clip after clip after clip. My wife and I watched this in real time, and our mouths were agape. It was even more mystifying than we thought it might be. Todd, your thoughts? Did you guys watch it live?
Yeah, we did watch it live, and against my better judgment, I was kind of sad to watch the whole thing. And I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be rude to older people, but it was like some kind of a geriatric grudge match. And I felt, this was an opportunity for President Trump to really shine and be gracious, because what they're doing to Biden is it's elder abuse. It really truly is, and it's embarrassing. And I just really hope that it could have come out a little bit better. There, look, you know how I go with all this stuff. I'm a libertarian at heart, and I think Mr. Trump is the better of all those choices. But out of 330 million people that live in the United States, this is the best we can do.
Well, I see it a little bit differently, but let's hear how Dr. Lee Vliet sees it. What'd you make of it last night, Lee?
Well, I think it was all designed to humiliate America with the supposed leader of the free world, a bumbling idiot, dementia, obviously on display. They knew that was the case. They knew that he could not handle it. No dementia patient could handle the rapid fire cognitive demands of speaking coherently in public, spontaneously. And it's very clear that this was orchestrated to show how bad his cognitive function is, making a mockery of America, making a mockery of the process of debate in a free society with competent candidates running for office, and setting the stage to trigger the next step of the plan to invoke the 25th Amendment or other means. Even if they don't go that route, then the executive team at DNC can declare him incompetent at the convention and substitute whomever they want. They changed the rules to be able to do that. Yeah. So I think all the way around, I think this was designed to show how bad the situation is, both to mock America and prepare the way for Biden's replacement at the convention. Now, I think given the gag orders on President Trump, which are unconscionable in my mind and a violation of his constitutional rights, I think there was no way realistically that President Trump could refuse to participate in the debate, because the American people that don't listen to SCT Report and Cloud Hub and all the programs we do, they have no way to hear his voice. So this was the only opportunity.
Well, that's a good point. The talking points last night from CNN, which was in full-blown panic mode, the talking points were just that he's going to need to be replaced. Okay, but here's the good news. According to Zero Hedge, he's not dropping out. Biden digs in after disastrous debate. He's committed to a second debate with Donald Trump in September, but we all understand he's not in charge, right? We know he's not in charge. It's not up to him.
Exactly.
But here's more good news. This from Charlie Kirk. It's likely already too late to remove Joe Biden from the ballot. Wisconsin is saying it's already too late to remove him. Nevada is saying after tonight, the fourth Friday in June, it will be too late to remove Biden. Georgia is saying only a few weeks remain before it's too late. So, you know what? Yeah. I think the Demonrats are going to have to go to war with the army they have, and that's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's not much of an army. And now the whole world can see exactly what I've been saying, and Todd's been saying, and Lee's been saying, and everybody's been saying who's paying attention. Joe Biden is nothing more than a puppet and a dog king.
I think this is our near-death experience, our collective humanity's near-death experience, the death of our nation. And, I've said it for some time because I really believe that God's divine hand is here, and God is allowing us to see exactly how bad it could be. Mr. Trump himself said, I'm the chosen one, and I think he will walk back into that office. And for reasons I can't fully understand, I don't think there's going to be a civil war. And I think we actually have a bright future in front of us. But this is our near-death experience. And I just pray it doesn't go over the edge for the entirety of humanity. I hope they're unsuccessful in sparking off a nuclear exchange, because the bad guys aren't going to stop, right? They can flip switches, they can introduce bugs. But if humanity stands and we frustrate the mission to destroy us, and I'm actually hopeful.
Todd, I want to pick up on your analogy with a near-death experience, because most people focus on NDEs as a glimpse into heaven and the light and seeing the tunnel of light, seeing Christ and seeing God and love and peace.
Yes. Yes.
But what people forget in the popular media and in many of the TV segments on near-death experiences is that there are many people whose near-death experience is a descent into hell.
Yep.
And they report seeing demons. They report seeing a terrifying future. And actually, some of those people who had the experience of near-death experience and descending into hell, actually, I've listened to interviews with some of those people, and it changed them so dramatically that they became believers in Christ.
That's right.
And to your point that you see the hand of God in this, I do think that the near-death experience and the vision of the hell our country will continue to face in perpetuity if the communist, Marxist, totalitarian control, lawless government continues.
Right.
But we just did a segment on Idaho farmers being decimated after planting their crops and having their water cut off abruptly with no notice. And this is the hell that awaits us. We are being allowed to see that. And you're right. It's our near-death experience, but it's a vision, a glimpse of the hell being unleashed.
It's the collective thing. Hang on, Sean. I just want to say one thing, and I'll shut up for a second. In this fight, Dr. Vliet, you and I, and frankly, Sean, we've all been working together for 3 or more years. Everybody in this fight that we've all become friends and family with have all had a near-death experience or have died and come back. In some cases, several times, myself included. And I think that's one of the reasons we were able to see this for what it is. We all knew for that reason. I haven't met one person that hasn't had that scenario that's been in this fight from the beginning.
Well, let me just say, I agree with both of you, but I don't think everyone knew. So part of this near-death experience might be a great awakening for even the Demonrats who formerly believed Joe Biden was the best man for the job and watched that train wreck last night. And now they too understand that the man is completely unfit to be dog catcher, much less president of the United States. So now the Demonrats are having an existential crisis. And I want to go to this clip. This was from last night, right after the debate. Van Jones, one of the biggest sycophants in the Demon Rat party. I want you to just listen to Van Jones try to spin this, even though he knows it's game over for Joe Biden. Listen to this and keep in mind, all these Demon Rats have to sell the people is climate change and abortion. Climate change and abortion on demand. Listen to this.
It's really devastating. And by the way, our allies are watching.
Yeah, look, I mean, the way that I would try to phrase it if I were less emotional is Biden stuttered, but he told the truth. He looked terrible, but his policies were good. Trump spoke plainly, but he lied the whole time. And he looked good, but his policies were terrible. I mean, he's going to do nothing on climate change. He was hugging the cactus on abortion. I mean, his policies are terrible. So you have somebody who probably shouldn't be president, and you have somebody who cannot be president in terms of what Donald Trump represents. So we have a problem as a country now, and this might be an opportunity for people to come together and figure this out, because neither one of those people right now are inspiring the confidence that they should inspire, that they can do the job in a way that would be good for the country.
But young voters are up for grabs in this election, and I don't know a voter under 30 who would have watched tonight and could say, I have confidence in Joe Biden and casting my vote for 4 more years of Biden.
All right, I'm coming back to you guys. Wow. What do you make of that clip?
What planet does Van Jones live on that he can make the statement that Trump was lying? It's their ability to flat out, categorically, knowingly lie on camera is absolutely mind-boggling.
Brazen. They're brazen. It's the hubris.
They
Doctor.
are brazen. Yeah,
it comes back to this. God hates hubris, and this is the moment. He's going to correct that.
Hubris on full display.
Yep.
But Van Jones has been a Marxist radical since the 1960s. He's just he looks polished now, but he didn't in the 1960s. He was a radical Marxist involved in riots and everything else that was abhorrent. It was anarchy.
Well, you know what I'd say?
Chrome or something.
I said to my wife last night as we were watching that clip, as we were watching the post-debate analysis by CNN. By the way, you asked, what planet does Van Jones live on? He lives on planet CNN, and that's where his paycheck comes from. So he lies to continue getting his paycheck. CNN. But I said to my wife last night, and I don't mean to be, I don't want to turn this into a racial thing, but I said to my wife that Van Jones is the ultimate Uncle Tom. Because what party wanted to keep slavery going in perpetuity? So if he's historically honest about politics, he should be honest about that, but he's not honest about anything. All right, but here's the good news, friends. This show is chock full of good news. The Supreme Court has just ruled two significant rulings. One, the Chevron ruling, which maybe Todd and Lee can talk about, but this one, the Supreme Court hands win to hundreds of Jan 6 defendants and weakens the DOJ's case. We'll go to this bit of news on Twitter from Fox News, and they help break it down. Listen to this.
And some more breaking news, this time about the January 6th rioters. The Supreme Court has just ruled. Let's get to Shannon Bream. What did they say?
So what they have said is that one of the statutes the Justice Department used to charge hundreds of different January 6 defendants is no good. And that includes President Donald Trump, because he has actually had two of these counts against him in the Jack Smith D.C. case against him, that federal criminal case that has been on hold here. So what essentially they say is this statute, which was passed in the wake of Enron, they say it doesn't fit here. He says, given that the subsection was enacted to address the Enron disaster, not some other far-flung set of dangers like what happened just right over here at the Capitol, it is unlikely that Congress responded with such an unfocused and grossly incommensurate patch in English that essentially means that all of these people who were charged under this particular obstruction statute for January 6th, that is no good. The dissent, this is a very interesting vote makeup, because the dissent is actually written by Justice Barrett, and she is joined by Justices Sotomayor and Kagan. She says that Congress did intend for this kind of conduct to be brought under this particular obstruction charge. She thinks the majority got it wrong. But what it means is a big headache for the DOJ and good news for hundreds of January 6 defendants charged under this statute, again including Donald J. Trump. We're so lucky to have an attorney on the panel today. Todd, you're the lawyer. What do you make of that? What's it mean?
Well, finally, out of all of the different challenges, it's astounding that none of these people were afforded any of their rights, due process or otherwise. The unlawful detainers, habeas corpus, all of their rights were suspended. And it's funny that the court picked this, so a very obscure piece of Sarbanes-Oxley, which is, designed to keep the financial services above boards, and reporting and disclosures, and somehow or other obstruction of justice finds its way into that piece of legislation. And the DOJ, of course, uses obscure legislation such as that for its maximum effect. These are effectively strict liability crimes that they used, which means you didn't have to have the intent. And that's where the Supreme Court is properly applying this. They're saying it's overbroad. You've used this, you've stripped away the intent requirement, and you can't do that. It's overreach. The reality is this, Sean. This is obscure law. There are dozens of other claims that are superior and should have prevailed long before now. So I find it very strange, including the people that actually found in favor. It's bizarre. As you talk about CNN world, we're in bizarro world.
Yes, total bizarro world. And let me show the other big blow to the deep state from SCOTUS. SCOTUS overturns Chevron deference in massive blow to the administrative stay-behind deep state. The Supreme Court has ruled to overturn the so-called Chevron deference, dealing a huge blow to that deep state. In a 6-3 decision along ideological lines, the Supreme Court's conservative majority upended the 40-year administrative law precedent that gave agencies across the Fed government leeway to interpret ambiguous laws through rulemaking. So rulemaking superseding the law of the land, and the Supreme Court said enough. Your thoughts on that, guys?
Dear God, finally, can I just, Doctor, I'll say it quickly and then be done. I am so overjoyed to hear this, because what we've seen is an out of control administrative branch, executive branch, acting like a legislature. right? So in our government, the legislature is supposed to make the laws. And the problem is that the Administrative Procedures Act has allowed the regulators, the administrative, the people who enforce the law to make their own laws. And they've just gone too far. They've been unbridled, and to the point where the EPA is the worst. They're now regulating water all the way to the point where it leaves your body as enforced by the DOD, the Army Corps of Engineers in particular. And they're not even going through the rulemaking process, which requires you to publish the law in the Federal Register after notice and comment and all these other things, these processes that make it real, that make it a joint decision amongst the people and the government. And they've avoided all that. They're actually enforcing laws that never went through the legal process and were made by somebody who has never intended to make law, the executive branch. And this is wonderful and huge. And again, bizarre world, where has this been for 40 years?
Well, and you know, Todd, it's been those 40 years, and I look back over that 40 years as my 40 years in medicine. And we have seen the regulatory state, regulatory agencies from HHS to FDA, IRS, the Securities and Exchange Commission, across the board. They have all been essentially acting lawlessly as a fourth branch of government, because they're not acting like a legislative branch. They are usurping the legislative branch completely, because they are dictatorial and tyrannical. They make new rules. Nobody even knows they've been made. And then they go and do FBI SWAT team arrests of people who broke a rule they didn't know existed, that no legislative action had ever been done on.
Or ATF murders a man by shooting him in the head at 6 a.m. His home, when they could have just knocked on the door or just called the man. A decent man ends up dead because of the ATF basically making its own rules and ignoring the Constitution, which I think probably includes you just can't kill people extrajudiciously.
There you go, extrajudicially. And let me just say this again for poignancy purposes. For the last 4 years, the executive branch has been publishing in the Federal Register proposed laws. These have not gone through the legal processes as required by the Administrative Procedures Act. And then they are putting them into effect as though they were real laws. I can give you an example. For instance, the Biden administration said you can't come in the United States if you didn't have a shot. That didn't go through any process. I think we'll make this one up today. Exactly as you said, Doctor, is that it's ruled by fiat. It is a dictatorship through the executive branch, and they usurped the power of the judiciary. What bothers me about this is, where the hell has the judiciary been for 40 years? Where was the bridle of power they're supposed to apply and say, no, you've gone too far. You can't do that. The Constitution doesn't let you. Where's the constitutional lens until today?
Well, Todd, you're right. And not only that, there's another example of the absence of the courts that just occurred when AAPS sued the FDA for release of the hydroxychloroquine national stockpile that was intended to be given to doctors and clinics and hospitals for patient use. Was donated by the pharmaceutical companies to be disseminated for treatment during COVID. The FDA blocked it, and the court dismissed the lawsuit by our medical group. In addition to that, one of the things I'm keenly aware of, because I was writing about it and speaking about it at the time, in March of 2020, Rick Bright, the director of BARDA, actually overruled the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the sitting president and blocked the use of hydroxychloroquine except in a clinical trial in a hospital on very narrow grounds, and issued that rule, and then later bragged about it. This was not anything surreptitious. He later bragged about it. He tried to get whistleblower protection, and bragged about it in an interview. Well, I blocked the president and Secretary Azar, who wanted to make hydroxychloroquine available to the public.
And do you know how they did that? Medical martial law. When a public health emergency is declared, they become the all-powerful. The public health authorities. In this case, was it the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Agency? Right. These are the guys that built COVID. These are the guys that built the bioweapon designed to transform everybody into new species. That's why it's plenary power. And they had a deal with the DOD. Right? Let us not forget that the DOD became in charge of the public health responsibility to the Defense Health Agency. Starting in 2019, 2023, it was finalized. When there's a public health emergency, it's the military in charge, and that's who those guys are. It is the scientific arm of the military. And of course, they overruled the president because the president, Mr. Trump, sadly declared a national emergency on 13 March 2020. And then they usurped his power. So he thought it was all going to him as a dictator. Effectively, that's what happens, is martial law. And they took that power away and said, no, it's a public health emergency. Now we're in charge, not you, Mr. President.
And it goes to the point about the regulatory.
Yes, it does.
Passing regulations and rules by unelected bureaucrats that then usurp Congress authority, the president's authority, and citizens' constitutional rights. Because with that one rule that Rick Bright issued late March 2020, he usurped the rights of doctors to serve their patient and the rights of patients to choose their treatment.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of things. It was the abuse of the regulatory state as the fourth branch of government, and it was the militarized medical martial law that you've been educating us all about for the last 3 years.
Well, when we think about the state behind deep state and this SCOTUS ruling, I want to play this clip from Vivek Ramaswamy, who makes a good point. And I don't know that the Demonrats care. I don't know that the average Demonrat cares. They hate Trump so much, they don't care about what happened last night. But for those who are intellectually honest, the Jimmy Dores of the world, they must be shocked to learn that Biden is that far gone, and they must then deduce that somebody else is running the show. And again, they don't care. I mean, they love Obama. So if it's Obama, they don't care about the unconstitutionality of what's happening here. But for the rest of the folks in the world who actually do think on their own and actually do care about the country and have identified as Demonrats for so long, maybe this is the wake-up call they needed. Listen to Ramaswamy. He asks a good question.
The reality is they deserve to be honest with the American people now. Who is actually running the country? Who is in charge of the United States of America? After last night's debate, I don't think there's a single person at home who saw that who believes it's Joe Biden, because it's not. But we deserve a government that tells us the truth. And I think one of the concerning questions for right now, not even the election, I'm talking about today, the next few months leading up to the election, is who is actually leading the United States of America? The Democrats and the White House have not offered a clear answer to that question. And if they tell us that's Joe Biden, we now know that is a lie. And Americans, I think, demand the truth because our security determines and depends on it.
Okay, I want to pause it there. Coming back to my guests. You know what I think of when I hear him ask those questions? Who's really running the country, Todd? The CIA.
Yes.
Eric Soetoro, Barack Obama, who was made by the CIA quite literally, is still running the show. It's not Joe Biden. It is the deep state. It is the CIA. It's Barack Obama. It is Marxists and communists.
Yes, this goes all the way back, believe it or not, to the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, who agreed in a partnership in 1880, leading, believe it or not, all the way to David Rockefeller effectively making Kissinger the president for life. He could walk in and out of the White House without any clearance through the back door. Nobody ever did anything. And he did that around the world, right? Because he was the chosen one of the owners to make policy. The whole rest of this thing is a joke. And when the intelligence services, the Five Eyes, right, not just the CIA, the Five Eyes are the ones who, at the end of the day, killed our president. And when they did kill JFK, it was an announcement to the world: we are now in charge. If we can get rid of this guy, we can get rid of any of you. And that was the message, and that's what's happened since. And Mr. Nixon adopted Kissinger's depopulation protocols in 1970.
Unbelievable. Do you guys want to see what some over on Twitter are describing as the kill shot, in the sense that it was a self-inflicted wound? Here's the puppet in chief, the dog king, Joe Biden, on, I believe, immigration.
Move until we get the total ban. on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
Again, my wife and I watched that live last night, and I thought Trump was brilliant, frankly. I mean, he did as best he could against somebody who shouldn't have been there at all. And so I think the whole thing gets dragged down. It makes our country look like the laughing stock that it is. But it also makes everybody around the world realize that we are just as much a captured people as the Chinese or as the Cubans or pick your poison. Our country has been hijacked. There was a coup in 2020, and everybody got to see the Dog King president last night. It's a joke.
I wanted to ask Dr. Vliet something. Earlier in our conversation, she said, free society. The question was, do we live in a free society? And I've struggled with this, doctor. Exactly in what way are we living in a free society? I struggle to understand that. And I'm hoping, you said
I don't think we are now. I don't think we are now.
Yeah, that's the way I took it.
No, you're right. I mean, every time that any of us goes against the narrative, we risk censorship, we risk persecution, we risk arrest, we risk loss of livelihood, debanking, cut off from
passport taken.
Yeah.
Scott Ritter, they just grabbed his passport. No law broken. They just said, you can't go talk to the Russians, so we'll just keep your passport.
I mean, it's really very chilling. It reminds me of the vulnerability that we felt when we went on the educational mission program to the Soviet Union in 1974 and 1975.
Right.
We were walking on eggshells the whole time.
Let me tell you where this ends. Having spent 3 years in a communist country, otherwise known as Cuba, when everybody is equally miserable and everybody has nothing, the human spirit to improve their lives and that of their children continues on. So what they do is they trade information. And this is precisely what happened in the Soviet Union and East Germany with the Stasi, is it becomes a society of narcs. And everybody tells on the other person for the slightest infraction. And what happens is society itself becomes a prison. You don't need prison guards because they're all telling on each other.
Guys, apologies for this real quick break. In a word about our sponsor. Heart disease, blood clots, strokes, and kidney failure. This can all be found on the back of an ibuprofen bottle. And to top it off, ibuprofen doesn't even get to the main cause of your pain and swelling problems, which is inflammation. But right now, you can go to nativepath.online/SGT to see your special offer for being an SGT Report listener. And I have to tell you, I take these supplements for my arthritis, and they really help. Researchers are saying to add this Antarctic super nutrient to your diet. We're talking about omega-3 fatty acids, but not just any form of omegas. These omega-3 fatty acids are sourced from wild-caught krill. The omega-3 content from krill oil has been shown to support healthy blood pressure, circulation, brain health, as well as reducing inflammation, swelling, and joint pain. In fact, it can outperform ibuprofen, Advil, and Tylenol. And it doesn't have the dangerous side effects either. For a limited time, you can get Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil for as low as $23 a bottle. Just go to nativepath.online/SGT right now to get your special offer for being a part of the SGT Report audience. The link is below.
And what happens is society itself becomes a prison. You don't need prison guards because they're all telling on each other.
Yep. Yep, that's the goal. And that's what recall Obama, see the whole policy here by the Demonrats and the communists and the Marxists is to indoctrinate the children to then tattle on their parents too, right?
That's right.
You create a compliant generation of little communists who grew up in public schools of indoctrination to turn their backs on their heritage and even on their own families, Todd.
Generations. How long was Soviet Russia a thing? It was generations, plural. So yes.
Right. Well, and I read an interesting post just this week, which I think is more accurate than most people realize, but that Rockefellers planned the women's liberation movement, which of course began in the 60s. The decade of the 60s and the baby boomer generation have done untold damage to this country. But the design was, first of all, get more women into the workplace so that there is the other half of the population that can be taxed, bring in money to the government, because homemakers were not taxed, and disrupt family life so that children would go into daycare to be indoctrinated, which was the Soviet model and the communist Chinese model, taking young children pre-kindergarten, putting them in the care of, in our case, it was supposedly private childcare, but not always. And in the Soviet Union and China, it was state-sponsored. But the bottom line is the children were taken away from the home and the influence of the parents, indoctrinated, and gradually dumbed down through changing the history and civics and government subjects that used to be taught. And we look at what has taken place over the last 3 generations. A generation is roughly 25 years. So we're looking at roughly 75 years, 3 generations, where they have totally changed the educational knowledge base of the American population.
Yeah. Well, let me share one other piece of good news, because everything you just said is 100% correct. And what we are living through, guys, as y'all know, is a war on logic. It's a war against logic and truth. Because when the enemies of humanity say the climate is changing, they follow up by saying, so pay carbon taxes to bankers. When they say that the world is overpopulated, they say, well, you should be able to abort your baby in the 9th month. When they say that the birth rate in the United States has plummeted and we're no longer replacing Americans at the rate that we need to, they say, open the borders. And then when they say that we want equity and inclusion for all, but you can't hire white men anymore, as Disney has now been caught saying, thanks to Project Veritas, you know, I'm talking about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, right? Okay. Yeah, well, it's a war against logic, and the people have woken up. So Tractor Supply has nuked its DEI policy to prevent itself from being Bud Lighted by conservatives. So go woke and go broke. Soon every company will learn. Ask a farmer how many sexes there are, or try milking a bull. Just try milking a bull, Demonrats.
Oh, dear Lord.
That's a great one.
It's quite a visual.
Well, it really is. We're in the Great Awakening here in this nation. And I will remember exactly where I was when the Dog King was brought down in front of the whole world. So I think we've hit the tipping point, guys.
I hope so. And I worry that our nation is a tinderbox and it takes one spark to light it off. But maybe this is the point, right? Maybe we're being eased into the near-death experience with something as obvious as happened last night. I pray that it stays peaceful. I pray that people have the grand opening of their mind to understand that everything they think they know is a facade. Everything they think the government has done for them is a lie. Does it take this? Because there's a whole lot more to go, including the fact that our government, buy-in through the DOD, poisoned billions of people intentionally. I mean, that is a fact. That is coming out. And people are going to have to reconcile this.
Well, I agree with what Todd just said. And I think there's no question that this bioweapon was developed over the last 20 years. And it was a military operation. DOD, not the good people in our military. Point. And the Department of Defense are those promoted on ideological grounds and those career bureaucrats who are part of the administrative state, the deep state. And they don't represent the good people, the patriots, who are the military volunteer service members. They were abused terribly during the 4 years of COVID under the Department of Defense operations carried out by the Biden administration. We did not have any mandated COVID shots during the Trump administration. That all came about under the Biden administration. Lloyd Austin, Department of Defense, Todd knows it well. You sued them. The ruling came out August 23rd, 2021, and your lawsuit was filed shortly after.
No, we sued before. We filed a temporary restraining order to prevent his order.
Oh, okay, okay.
And luckily, we were able to stop the use of force authorization. But I will have you know this, Doctor. Everything you said is right. However, bear in mind that our experience with COVID was part two. That had happened in 2001 in the military, where they forced the anthrax shots on our military who were going to be deployed across to the Middle East. And they didn't have any say in it, and people were horribly injured and killed, and their families destroyed by the same thing. And what actually happened is our military and government figured out, how it was litigated to stop. Believe it or not, Judge Sullivan is the one who stopped it. I was surprised to understand that, a federal district court judge in D.C., and some of my co-counsel that I worked with. So I've had the benefit of understanding that our government took the experiences of poisoning their service members in 2001 and figuring out how to avoid the same legal traps, the same ways that we would seek redress to stop it. They used the 2001 anthrax experience as a ways to cut off all redress. No way to stop this. And that's, at the end of the day, Doctor, how it was. We all raised up together and we just said no. And that was the only way to stop it. It was a great giant opt-out because every legal means was destroyed.
You're exactly right. And the anthrax, the Gulf War syndrome, actually, there's a brilliant program from 2008 by Dr. Garth Nicholson, who testified before Congress about the bioweapon that was created at that time. And the bioweapon that was used on our troops in the Gulf War that led to Gulf War syndrome was weaponized mycoplasma organisms that had been developed by the United States bioweapons program and provided to the Iraq government to fight against Iran in their war. And then Iraq turned and used it against our troops. Vaccines since that time have contained contamination with mycoplasma, which creates a chronic infection that suppresses the immune system and leads to escalating neurodegenerative disorders as well as autoimmune conditions. So it's very clear that they knew exactly what they were doing in 2001 with anthrax. And I don't know if you realized or remembered, maybe you did, but the anthrax program was on the verge of collapsing because the anthrax vaccine was dangerous and caused horrific side effects. And one of the scientists who was later correctly identified, they persecuted the wrong person to begin with. He sued the government and won.
That's right.
But
it's Colonel Renfrew.
No. This is someone totally different. Totally different. It was Dr. Stephen Hatfill who was wrongfully accused, who later sued the government and won a major settlement. The scientist who actually engaged in the subterfuge with mailing the anthrax letters was later identified. And those letters were done to salvage the anthrax program. They mailed the letters. He mailed the letters to Congress. That man later committed suicide, but he did that to try and frighten the public so that the anthrax program would be salvaged.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was talking about Colonel Renfrew. It was Dovey Rumsfeld who relied upon that case. And yeah, what a tremendous
that was the successful lawsuit.
It was. And Dale Saran, my co-counsel, was the lead counsel there.
Yes, exactly right. But those same provisions, protection provisions that had been put in place by Congress when that court case was won on the anthrax vaccine, those same provisions were totally ignored by the Biden administration mandates.
Exactly right. And isn't this the point? What I'm trying to impart, and you did a very good job of demonstrating, is the malintent. This was done intentionally. They had prepared for decades in advance how to cut off every absolute avenue of redress and how to better poison humanity for the purpose of killing 7 billion people. And this is my point. People saw that last night and they realized they'd been lied to about Joe Biden's competence. The lie is a lot bigger and worse than you think it is, but it is nonetheless true. And you're going to have to reconcile this with your life understanding, your life vision. And it's not easy. And the one thing I want people to understand is, it's really, in my view, sad when you see people go, well, you got the shot, good luck dying or whatever else. You know what? People need love. They need understanding. A lot of us have been screwed up mentally our whole lives from the planning you talked about, Sean and Dr. Lee. From kindergarten, we've been programmed. We need to show people that have been injured, vaccine injured and otherwise, people who are reconciling this, the change of their worldview to reconcile the fact that they've been murdered or attempted murdered. We got to show them love and compassion and understanding. We've got to bring them along gently.
No, we got to bring these criminals to justice too.
Damn right we do.
Albert Bourla at the top of the list, Anthony Fauci maybe second on the list, and then Bancel over at Moderna. Maybe he should be 2 or 3, but Fauci's in the top 3. And imagine the panic happening right now in this country after Thursday night's debate.
Anderson, this was a game-changing debate in the sense that right now, as we speak, there is a deep, a wide, and a very aggressive panic in the Democratic Party. It started minutes into the debate, and it continues right now. It involves party strategists, it involves elected officials, it involves fundraisers. And they're having conversations about the president's performance, which they think was dismal, which they think will hurt other people down the party in the ticket, and they're having conversations about what they should do about it. Some of those conversations include, should we go to the White House and ask the president to step aside? Other of the conversations are about, should prominent Democrats go public?
The panic that Fauci and Brennan and all of the traitors must be feeling right now is palpable. I mean, wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall at the DNC, listening to the panic now ensuing? I'm not trying to be too naive here because, I know there is a false right paradigm, but imagine the panic amongst the rhinos and the Demonrats. So there can be all sorts of conjecture today about what comes next. Is it going to be Michael Obama? Is it going to be Gavin Newsom? What are they going to do? They have to replace Joe Biden. Well, here's @Naval on Twitter, really level setting for us in about 90 seconds about how dire the situation is for the Demonrats.
Well, it's obviously a disaster for the Democrats. They've got 40 days to find a replacement for him, which is going to be really difficult. 40-day limit is because of the Ohio ballot rules to get on the ballot. I think you have till August 4th, I think. In any case, because of Biden being the incumbent, they have to convince him to step down, which I don't think actually will be that hard. But then they have the harder job of convincing Harris to step down alongside him, because if she doesn't voluntarily step aside, she's going to get beaten up by Trump. She loses very badly to him in the polls. And then they have to replace the entire Biden-Harris ticket with probably, I would guess, Whitmer and somebody else. This is where it gets really tricky. Maybe Hillary makes a comeback. I don't think they can quite run Newsom. He's not ready, and California's record is terrible, and he would lose all the swing states. So I think the Democrats are in a very difficult position, and that's all I got right now. And my question about who's been in charge all along, it's been semi-obvious that it hasn't been Joe. So I think it's just a good moment to reflect upon how the bureaucracy in this country, and frankly in the entire West, is highly entrenched and is on autopilot. Imagine if you were an investor in a company or a board member and you walk into your board meeting and you realize the CEO hasn't shown up to work for 2 years and really just the VPs have been running amok and doing whatever they wanted. You'd know at that point that anything run by committee is incredibly inefficient and wasteful and almost kleptocratic. So you would expect the company to have essentially been looted the entire time.
Isn't that brilliant?
Kleptocratic. He's absolutely right. Kleptocratic.
That's
Brilliant.
what we're living through, right?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
They're robbing the stores while they can.
My God. Well, we're a banana republic. Lee, you're muted, but you have the floor. Go ahead.
It's the planned destruction of the constitutional republic of the United States of America, which Obama said 5 days before 2008 voting. We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. This is what he was talking about, transforming the demographics, destroying the constitutional republic, replacing it with totalitarianism, Marxism, whatever ism name you want to give it, it's totalitarianism, and bringing down our economy, undermining the dollar, and replacing it with the New World Order. That's been the agenda all along. And for those who don't believe Henry Kissinger as the master of depopulation, we did several programs on that with the whistleblower report, and his 1974 classified document on the population control agenda that he prepared for the government was later declassified, and that's on our website.
And by the way,
Thank you
I mentioned Brennan and Fauci. I definitely should have mentioned Obama, Barry Soetoro, because we are 16 weeks away from fundamentally changing America back to a constitutional republic. And I know they're shaking in their boots after last night, because now there's no way they can steal the election. Nobody would believe it in 10 million years. So now what are they going to do? I mean, the next few weeks is going to be some of the most gripping weeks in the history of our republic as we watch the Demonrats scramble. The dam is broke, guys. And now they don't have the ability to even steal the election because nobody would ever believe it in a million years.
It's a do or die mission, and they know it. This is the point, is it's them or us. And they're going to try anything they can, like I said, a nuclear exchange or otherwise. They've been trying for a long time to get the Persians or the Russians or somebody to kick off a nuclear exchange, because they didn't succeed in their job. They tried to kill 7 billion people. Who would then take issue? They didn't do it. They didn't succeed. And here we are on the verge, our near-death experience, on the verge of surviving this, and then the reckoning begins. I pray so.
Lee, did you have something to say? It looked like you did.
Well, they're already registering this massive influx of illegals to vote in Arizona, California, across the United States. I am not as quick to say that they can't steal another election.
Well, they can try. They'll try.
Nothing from 2020, 2022, or even earlier than that with 2012, probably 2008. None of those problems have been fixed at all. In fact, they're far worse than they were then. So it's going to take a lot of still awakening the American public to the reality of what we face and the enormity of the consequences.
But think of all the cards the enemy has already played that they can't play again. One of which was in 2020, when everybody knew, okay, the night after the election, we all went to sleep. Remember, they stopped counting. Then the hockey stick, magic votes.
Right.
And they can't do that again, because that woke everybody up, which is why people showed up on January 6th in Washington, D.C., demanding a redress of grievances for a stolen election, and then they played the insurrection card. None of that's going to work again.
Follow this through. Follow your logic through, and this is where we arrive back at law enforcement is the key. Without law enforcement, there's no law. So let us assume that you're right, and they do cheat, and then what? They're going to have to be dragged out of their chairs. How does that happen? Unless you have law enforcement on your side doing that, then you have a civil war. And this is why we've been focusing our energies on building that bridge. The military is no longer a risk. They're not going to enforce Tedros' rules. But now we're stuck with this paradigm. Who is in charge? And if they're not careful, you end up in 1994 with Ceausescu, where the military and the cops take the president out in the back and shoot him. And I think they understand that paradigm too. But they're already gearing up with these non-scalable fences. How are you going to take us out of our seats? I mean, this is a really scary paradigm. And what we've got to do is get law enforcement on our side to understand it and enforce the law per the Constitution. All we're asking them to do is do your job through a constitutional lens. Nothing more. That's all we need. And then we can restore the republic.
Have you guys ever built a house out of cards, right? It's difficult to do. There's some people that are really good at it, and they'll build these castles out of cards. But then to bring the whole thing down, you just pull one card at the bottom. I think that's what happened last night. And my point about the Jan 6th thing is that if they steal another election, let's fast forward to January 6th, 2025. We will not allow a fraudulent election to be certified, as happened the night of the quote unquote insurrection. They've already played that card. They're not going to get to play it again, you guys. That's my opinion. Todd,
what does it look like?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, what does it look like? Let us assume that you're right. What does that look like? Do people charge back into the chamber and say, you're done, you're out of here? I mean, because that's what happened to Kazakhstan, by the way. When digital ID was introduced and they cut off people's supply, they said you can't get money out of your bank account. That's exactly what happened. The people rose up. They had one firefight with law enforcement. It was over. The people won. They started dragging their politicians and the doctors who prescribed these shots to them, and they burned down their houses and beheaded them. That's where this goes if we don't have a peaceful transition of power. And this is why I keep harping on this. We need law enforcement on our side to maintain the integrity of our republic. And where can you find me? Most of the time at Cloud Hub these days. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we appreciate you. And Dr. Vliet, why don't you shout out your website as well?
Yes, we are at www.truthforhealth.org, and we are censored. So just persist. We've got the whistleblower report, our faith over fear programs. I just did one on the avian flu hoax, and I really encourage people to look at that because we talk about effective treatments that we already have. You don't need the experimental avian flu shots that are just more mRNA damage, bioweapons, and experimental. And then I just did one this week on amyloid as the new cover-up of COVID vaccine injury and all big pharma drugs they are now promoting in ads to treat amyloid. Have you heard about amyloid? We've only known about amyloid and dementia for 40 years. So suddenly they're promoting it. They're trying to cover up the COVID vaccine injury. Learn what you can do to help protect your brain and help protect your health. So we've got all those resources and all these older government documents that you hear us talking about a lot on 5G and your health, the Defense Department document from 1976 and Kissinger's population document from 1974, the chlorine dioxide resources, they're all on our website for you to use and learn and empower yourself to say no to more tyranny.
Very good. All right. Beautiful. As always, I really appreciate you guys. I love our bi-weekly discussions. So until 2 weeks from now, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Sean.
God bless you both.
All right. And God bless the listeners. Guys, thanks so much for all you do, too. You may want to get involved in this next election in November by becoming a poll watcher. It's not hard to do. And I think that is a way for you to safeguard this next election as a red-blooded patriot, because you know they're going to try to steal another one. And I'll remind you guys every single day for free. Check us out at sgtreport.com to get the real news, the antidote to corporate propaganda 24/7. May God bless you and yours, friends. Bye-bye.
Our fate rests in law enforcement and what they're going to do, Sean, in particular. These bastards aren't going to leave their seats. And so the question is, how are we going to remove them from their seats? Are we going to do it with law enforcement or against law enforcement? That's the paradigm we face.
They felt that this counter-revolution could best be guarded against by creating and establishing re-education centers in the Southwest, where we would take all the people who needed to be re-educated into the new way of thinking and teach them how things were going to be. I ask, well, what is going to happen to those people that we can't re-educate, that are die-hard capitalists? And the reply was that they'd have to be eliminated. And when I pursued this further, they estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill.